What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from BackToMovieGuy.com. This is a question I pose to you. What matters more, history or prophecy? History, of course. Like, why is that a question? Why do we kick off this series with that? This is Dune Prophecy. This is season 1, episode 1. It's currently available on Max with audio description. It's only because history is real. Like, prophecy is just prophecy until it's fulfilled. You could prophesize. And the funny thing about time and how time is spent in the world of Dune, you could prophesize something that somebody may not even know. This takes place, for example, this takes place 10,000 years before the events of the film. So if you're sitting around thinking, maybe Timothy Chalamet is going to show up. No, he's not. He's not going to show up. That would be absolutely nuts if he did. Then we would be getting into like reincarnation at this point. Like in 10,000 years, you'll be reincarnated into, no, he's not in this or will be. So 10,000 years is like way before everything. This is a prequel, loosely based on Dune and the book written by Frank Herbert's kid, Daughters of... I don't want to say Daughters of Dune. I feel like that's not the right title. Daughters of something, which is written by Herbert's son, which was sort of a spiritual connection to the original story. So I watched this with audio description, again, blind film critic. And here's my history, because I love putting my bias right out there. Did not read the book, was not a Dune fan, did not see David Lynch's Dune. My first introduction to Dune was Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and I was already blind, so it was without audio description. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I think this is inherently bad or good or stupid because I didn't know what it was. But there are people out there who are like diehard Dune fans, and I can only attack it from the perspective of me, which is I've seen Dune, the first one, twice, and I've seen Dune, the second one, once. I plan to watch it again, obviously a little bit closer to awards season, but not currently. And honestly, I don't think watching the movies is going to help me more because it's a prequel and there are no characters that overlap. So the actors here that you would recognize, Emily Watson, Olivia Williams, Mark Strong, kudos to being in 2 HBO series back to back, by the way. And Travis Fimmel. I would say this is definitely a get for for Travis, who last appeared on Vikings. But for the other people, they're all sort of movie stars. Travis is the only one who kind of is just a TV star. And it's we've got the sisters, we've got prophecies. This was really hard to follow. So what I'll say is my initial reaction was that there's a lot happening. There are a lot of characters. I don't know why I'm coughing so much. But the whole thing opens with this like data dump of just exposition, to the point where I was sitting there going, holy exposition, Batman. Just like almost like there could be a prequel to the prequel, like that looks like Terminator, like mixed with Transformers or something. So way back, because we're already this takes place like this takes place a few years after the war with the thinking machines. So Chat GPT, the war with... very timely as we talk about AI. Yeah, we went to war with AI, and eventually we defeated them. And after being enslaved by AI, I guess, but they call them thinking machines here. So possibly Transformers. I don't know. Maybe this is spiritually connected to Transformers. Those are thinking machines. Maybe Optimus Prime turns on us. I don't know. Okay, we didn't get specifics, but there was a war, and we won. And thinking machines have been outlawed, although they use a lot of technology in this. So I don't know at what point they consider something to be a thinking machine. There wasn't really like a definition. There aren't like the full rules, like this is where the line is drawn in the sand. um so uh, who knows what level of computing a thing has to do in order to qualify as, I no, we can't use that anymore. But we live in a world now where we've got these sisters, space witches. Love space witches. We talk about them all the time in Star Wars universe. Now that we have space witches, which we don't need in Star Wars, by the way, because what made Star Wars cool was Star Wars and the Force and lightsabers, and you don't need a. I went into that sort of lamentation over the course of, I don't know, like the last couple Star Wars shows. I'm like, yeah, stop bringing in. I feel like we're gonna get Star Wars zombies at some point. Like Star Wars. Star Wars versus King Kong. Like, I just, no, the thing that makes you cool is what you are, and embrace that and learn how to write that. You do not need to bring in space witches. So you certainly don't need to call them anything that would relate to witches, by the way. Definitely don't need to use the word. Here, obviously, we don't. They're more like sisterhood, and trying to get somebody in power. And we see that they do have some powers themselves. Vahelia, who is the lead here, played by Emily Watson, uses a power to get rid of somebody who's sort of a dissenter. She has a sister played by Olivia Williams. Tuya. I'm not going to get these names right. I was sitting here, I was going through these names, and I was like, fuck. Because I've seen the episode once. I'm giving it a cold recap based off of what I remember from one episode and audio description and being blind. That is my perspective. That is a perspective that I offer. Additionally, not overtly versed in Dune. So it's not like a Marvel thing where I can give you a whole bunch of backstory that I happen to know. Just as is. So they're trying to get somebody into a seat of power. Eventually, we get to Inez, who is maybe the best choice to marry to this young kid who's like 8, 9, 8, I think 9. I don't know. He's one of those. There's this weird wedding ceremony thing that they go through by eating a pomegranate, and there's this little lizard transformer that the boy has that's a thinking machine. Travis Fimmel plays this like war hero that comes in. Forgot his name. He has actually an easier name to remember too, which is funny. He has like a name that makes more Duncan or something like that. But he's got ideas about like the insurgency and there was a little bit of an insurgency with the spices, and he thinks that that the top houses are ignoring it and they shouldn't be, which eventually leads to him. He does stab this little transformer thing into and then there's this war about oh my god, it's blasphemy, and it's a thinking machine. People are like, is that really the word? But we can let it go. And of course, the whole time I'm thinking, isn't this like a Joffrey thing? Isn't this kid like supposed to be like the future ruler? Isn't that why they're marrying these two? Like, are we even at a stage yet? What is the hierarchy? Where's the kings? Like, who's in charge? Like, there are random people in the audience just like shouting things, but it's like, if Joffrey had like in Game of Thrones, if Joffrey had a thinking machine at his stage, not that he would have been able to do shit. Like that kid could have brought back thinking machines. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of looking at this as like being like that because he's, a kid that has to marry somebody older than him. And yes, Joffrey was a little bit older than this kid is to begin with, but he was and had more dialogue and was more established as being a douchebag. But honestly, Joffrey could have brought in anything, and who's going to tell him that? And he was in line for succession and stuff like that. So, what is the power struggle here? Like, what's happening? I feel like that was not established well enough for me because people are standing up, making accusations, and it's like, are we in the kind of regime where people can do that? So this is where my lack of knowledge of Dune makes sense because I'm like, who is the leader and why does this marriage matter? Because I felt like somebody needed to be like, hold your tongue, like I was expecting the usual stuff when you have this sort of power dynamic, when you have somebody and they're going out of their way to try to marry Inez to this kid so that she'll eventually be in charge one day. Anyway, but in charge of what? If they can't silence anybody, then, you know, who has the official final word in this? The scene is kind of a mess. Anyway, um, Travis Fimmel, because I forgot his character's name, he tries to talk to, I think, the leader, who has no backbone, I guess. And about this thing about the uprising, and eventually he goes in and the guy says something about like I'll be a believer when I'm relieved of, I don't know, he has some quote. I think Travis Fimmel misunderstands that because he goes and kills the kid. He's like, oh, you want to be relieved of your duties, do you? Okay, well, I can do that. So I guess he has no heir to the throne anymore. And he boils the kid from the inside out is the best way I can describe that. Like the kid just starts like bubbles and stuff start popping on his skin. Sounds really gruesome. The description on this was excellent, but I was thinking about how there was like a social media backlash on Terrifier for its violence against kids, which by the way, it's we have plenty of violence in media against kids anyway, but it is sort of like it's a little bit of a taboo in horror movies to try not to kill little kids in violent ways. Not that kids don't die in things, but when you look at like the penguin, they just kind of drowned. Like, not really the same thing. This kid kind of burns to a crisp while screaming. So, in Dune, I'm not sure everybody was ready for that, but when you really think about like even his death versus like Joffrey's death, well, Joffrey's death not great. This one worse, if we're comparing it to the Game of Thrones, like future king to future king or king to king or whatever his level of leader. I don't understand where this kid is in the hierarchy and why his marriage matters, but he's some sort of royalty. So, but then what they don't jump into is how somewhere across the galaxy, wherever the sisterhood is, one of the sisters drops, and the same thing is happening to her. So she is somehow connected to the boy in a way that hasn't been explained. And Valère Emily Watson comes out and sees her bubbling and remembers prophecy that her mother told her at the beginning that she will see the raging fire or some, I don't know, I can't remember. There's some prophecy that she gives her, and then she's like, I see now, mother. And then the episode ends. That is a really quick recap of episode 1 of Dune Prophecy. It's not the penguin. It doesn't immediately ring true to being like oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But I also, even though I kind of jokingly made it through this, it's just difficult to watch for me. I also don't think this is bad. I think there's stuff here that could be explored more. But the problem is it has a very expansive cast, and a lot of people, I'm having a hard time picking up on who they are, what their connection is to somebody else. Even though there's a data dump of backstory, there isn't really a whole lot of where are we now. And I was thinking about, in terms of where are we now versus 10,000 years later, there being the events of Dune, right? So this is, I mean, when you think about where our human history is, 10,000 years ago, what we were doing, some people don't even believe 10,000 years ago exists. There are literal people who believe that the Earth is only like, what, 4,000 years old or something like that. So they don't even believe that humans were around back as far as 10,000 years. So when you think about the earliest shit you can think of, you know, like Romans and Greeks and I don't know, Egyptians building pyramids. Pick something, you know, pick your earliest civilization, Mesopotamian type stuff within the last 10,000 years. And you look at this, and then you look, okay, well, 10,000 years in the future is going to be Timothée Chalamet. It's too close for you to put that much difference in terms of. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel like this is a show. It doesn't feel like they went out of their way to make it feel like this is something that takes place 10,000 years before Timothée Chalamet's Dune. So I do have a problem with that. That is the only thing, is that I feel like, and that is the struggle, and what could have really helped here is showing it a little bit closer, downgrading the technology so that way, because what's funny here is you see the thinking, right, the thinking machine, and it's the lizard, and then there's that scene in the first Dune where he's attacked by like the AI insect, and it's like, well, that's basically this. Are you telling me we have the same thing 10,000 years in the future? Like, this hasn't evolved at all. Like, we haven't moved the needle. Nothing has changed. 10,000 years. Like, if you had told me 1,000 years, that would be a lot. 1,000 years ago, you know, we were in a very different place. 100 years ago, we were in a very different place. You know, the internet was born and prominently started getting pushed out in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like the late 80s. But yes, it was born before that. But I mean, like to the public, when public started having access to internet, not just like close. Yes, I know the history of the internet, but I'm talking about like when people started having and seeing it on like outside of government use. That's a lot. You know, I mean, we expand a lot in short spans of time. So you're telling me in 10,000 years in the world of Frank Herbert, almost nothing happens. I don't believe that. I just, that's where I kind of draw the line, where I'm like, no. You know, I mean, I don't know about like Star Wars and the lineage and stuff like that, but if you were to take Phantom Menace, right, and then go 10,000 years before Phantom Menace, and then show you something that looked eerily similar to Phantom Menace, I think the Star Wars fans would be up in arms. If you did it with Star Trek, you know, like take any franchise, right? Take Star Trek and you're like 10,000 years ago from the beginning of Star Trek, and you're like, this looks the same, huh? You know, almost the same. It's very weird. So I think they swung a little bit too big on I don't actually care what was in the Sisterhood book, because it's not Dune. I mean, it's not written by Frank Herbert. So what you have to understand is everything is supposed to support Herbert's original vision and then build out from that. So Denis is thinking about supporting Herbert's vision, not necessarily Herbert's son's vision of Dune. So support the original vision of the original creator. And if you're going to start expanding out in franchising and doing prequels and sequels and spin-offs and stuff like that, which is probably what they're going to end up doing, then have more creativity. And I would have downgraded this a lot in terms of the look, feel, the technology, everything, because unfortunately the bar has already been set. The film is already out there. Dune is already out there. So you have to ask yourself, what does the world look like 10,000 years before that? And it cannot look that similar because it's too big of a span of time. So I'm sort of on the series. It was really hard to follow from with that many characters being introduced. It was an episode I felt like apparently need to watch this again because we're introducing 1,000 characters. And with that, I also thought the audio description, while some of it was really good, especially with like the gory details of the bubbling deaths that we got, little details about like they were snorting something, I don't know, cocaine or spice or who the fuck knows. They snorted a drug. We didn't. There are also like 20 characters introduced in the show, and if you ask me what do they all look like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that we actually got an expansive amount of difference in these characters. And also with sci-fi shows, I think people are a little bit hesitant to talk about race. So you don't even get that in any sort of ethnic description of tone, because people are often hesitant to talk about, well, because race is not the same thing in some of these sci-fi worlds. We're just casting actors. We're having a diverse cast without necessarily using the same contextual races. And I mean, in the world of Star Wars, when you have aliens and stuff, and you have blue things, and it just takes on a completely different meaning than the way that we would use it today. So with sci-fi, you often lose that element, but it is a descriptor. It is something that is used to give us context as to what these people look like. And I just felt like, even like with hairstyles and what people were wearing, I felt like that was, when you have this many this much amount of characters to introduce in the first episode, it's really hard. This is an uphill battle in terms of audio description. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people in the blind community say they don't watch things that are like action science fiction, because they feel like they're being left out and left behind. And I think the movies do a much better job of being able to manage that. Oddly enough, I feel like the movies, granted each movie is like, pushing 3 hours, but it also allows for more time to describe the characters. And I honestly think they had less characters. I feel like it was easier just because it's spread out more. It doesn't feel like it's all clustered together. This was taking it from a pilot standpoint, where it's like, well, we have to show you all the characters that are going to be in the 6 episodes in the first episode. So they're cramming all these people in here, but I don't know that much about any of them. And that is what I kind of found it really hard to do from that standpoint. So I know the writers got to write for the largest audience possible, which, yes, is sighted people, but from a blind critic standpoint, it does make it really hard for me to jump on board and get really excited about it. And again, I do feel like, what are you doing? If you're going to choose 10,000 years, then make a bold statement and give us something that looks 10,000 years different, and not something that feels like it's 100 years before the events of Dune, where people are like, maybe Timothée Chalamet will show up because it looks like something that he could show up in, like people were wondering if Batman was going to show up suddenly in The Penguin, just even as like a little cameo in the background or something. But that's because he could. It was clear in that world he could. In this world, it's not actually clear that Timothée Chalamet couldn't, except for the fact of when this takes place. So, anyway, I probably pissed off every Dune fan, but this is all I got. If you want, the beautiful thing about the internet is that there are people with different perspectives. So you can go find somebody who loves Dune see what they have to say, see if they like it, you know. I haven't necessarily seen like glowing across the board the same way I've seen with the Penguin. This doesn't seem to be getting that, so you may be struggling to find that one person who just adores this, like with every fiber of their being. But people seem to be, they don't hate it. This isn't the Acolyte, so and I don't think this is the Acolyte either. But I did. The funny thing is, I actually liked episode 1 of the Acolyte, and then it just precipitously dropped after that. Maybe it was a Carrie Ann Moss effect. I don't know, but um, yeah, I'm gonna give Dune Prophecy. I'm gonna give it a B. I have to think about it also as a pilot. Did it work? Did it set it up? Did it do what it's supposed to do? And it kind of clustered it for me. Like it was kind of a little bit of a clusterfuck, and it has some cool ideas, but if it doesn't actually feel like they're cool enough to be as far apart as it's supposed to be. So this didn't quite hit everything it needed to hit. It's got some really great talent here. I'm excited to see more from Emily Watson, Academy Award nominee winner. Did she win? I know she's nominated. Positive she's nominated. I don't have to look that up. I can't remember if she won though. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.